They're not on the Forbes list, they rarely appear in the news, and yet they control more of America than the president ever will. When people talk about the elites, they picture Silicon Valley billionaires or Wall Street bankers, but behind them, in the shadows, are families whose names you don't even know, families who fund presidents, own central banks, and write the rules of capitalism itself. In this video, you're going to meet the families who own America, not metaphorically, but literally. Through secretive trusts, private banks, military contracts, and generational wealth, these dynasties have built empires so vast they could collapse entire sectors of the US economy with a single boardroom decision. From the Rothschilds to the Rockefellers, the Bush dynasty to the hidden Walton Empire, we're exposing the power structures that govern your reality without you even realizing it. And by the end of this video, you won't be asking if America is owned, you'll be asking how deep the rabbit hole goes. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe for more truths they don't want you to know. And check the links in the description for exclusive content and tools we only share with insiders. The hidden empire of family wealth. Modern power isn't flashy. It doesn't scream from rooftops. It whispers from behind 50-page trust agreements and offshore asset protection structures. Most people think wealth is something you earn, save, and invest. But for America's ruling families, wealth is a permanent structure, a system, a self-replicating machine. In the US alone, over $84 trillion is expected to be passed from baby boomers to their heirs in the coming decades, most of it through dynastic wealth vehicles that dodge taxes, regulations, and scrutiny. And controlling the flow of that wealth are the dynasties, the families who don't just have money, they have continuity. Let's start with the Walton family, heirs to the Walmart fortune. You probably know they're rich. What you don't know is how much they own. Walmart generates $648 billion per year in revenue. The Walton family collectively owns just under 50% of all shares. That means their wealth isn't just passive, it's a command center. They're not just rich, they're owners of the infrastructure of American retail. But here's the kicker, most of that wealth is held in silent vehicles. Specifically, the Walton Family Holdings Trust and Walton Enterprises LLC. These two structures let them pay next to zero in capital gains tax, avoid estate taxes through generational skips, maintain board control without public exposure. They've mastered legal invisibility. The game is rigged. And the 1% designed the board. Let's make something very clear. The families that run America don't play by the same rules. They design the rules. And when the rules don't work, they change them. Take the Rockefeller family. Everyone thinks their influence ended with John D. Rockefeller. That's a fantasy. The Rockefellers seeded dozens of institutions that still hold structural influence over US policy. The Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, Chase Manhattan Bank, which eventually merged into JP Morgan Chase, major stakes in oil, media, and pharmaceuticals. Through a labyrinth of trusts, the family's fortune hasn't disappeared, it's just diversified across sectors and continents. You may not see the name Rockefeller on a glass skyscraper anymore, but their fingerprints are all over your financial reality. And how did they pull this off? By turning their wealth into a system, one that produces influence rather than just passive returns. Their foundations give them access to politicians, tax-exempt asset protection, the ability to fund ideological agendas under the radar. The real owners of the Fed. Now let's enter taboo territory. Who owns the Federal Reserve? Most Americans think it's a government institution. Wrong. It's a private banking cartel with shareholders. And while the exact ownership is obscured, historians and economists have long traced major stakes to families like the Rothschilds, via European central banking networks, the Warburgs, instrumental in the creation of the Fed, the Rockefellers, via Chase and Citibank. These families don't just influence US monetary policy, they design it through networks like Bank for International Settlements, BIS, International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank. These institutions operate on a layer above nation-states, and families who hold legacy power inside them wield quiet influence that presidents can't even dream of. From oil to AI, dynasties shift control with the times. The powerful don't get stuck in one industry, they move with the waves. In the 1900s, it was oil, Rockefellers, Rothschilds, Gettys. Mid-century, it shifted to finance and pharmaceuticals. Today, it's AI, data, and biosurveillance. And guess what? The same families are positioning themselves again. Take the Thiel family, with Peter Thiel acting as the bridge between libertarian ideology and surveillance capitalism. Palantir, originally funded by the CIA's In-Q-Tel, stakes in Facebook, Stripe, and biotech ventures, influence in US defense and election policy. He's not a legacy dynasty yet, but his structure mimics the old playbook: create something the government needs, sell it back to them, use that influence to shape legislation that protects your empire. This is how empires get reborn, the families that outrank presidents. Part 5. The Bush Dynasty, War, Oil, and the CIA. Most people think of the Bush family as just two former presidents. Wrong. They are the military-industrial aristocracy of America. Prescott Bush, banker, senator, and early financier of Nazi Germany via Union Banking Corp. George H.W. Bush, CIA director turned president, the only US president to run the intelligence community before the White House. George W. Bush came in just in time for Halliburton contracts, Iraq War oil spoils, and billions in defense deals. Here's what most people miss. The Bush family sits at the intersection of finance, war, and intelligence. They don't just influence military decisions, they profit from them. They have ties to Carlyle Group, defense investments, SAIC, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, indirectly via policy and lobbying, private equity arms that invest in post-conflict reconstruction. They don't start wars for oil, they start wars for systems that generate multi-generational wealth. BlackRock, the new face of dynasty. You want to know who owns America? Start with BlackRock. They control $10.5 trillion in assets, more than the GDP of every country except the US and China. They own stakes in nearly every major American company, and through their Aladdin algorithm, they process 10% of global financial flows every single day. But here's the twist: BlackRock itself is not the end of the chain, it's the face. Behind it, a web of interlocked families, trusts, and sovereign wealth funds who own the ownership. BlackRock is the modern dynasty, faceless, borderless, AI-powered. And yes, the same families that once owned railroads and oil fields now own data, markets, and public perception. The untouchables, families above the radar. Let's get to the real elites, the ones you never hear about because they don't want you to. The DuPont family, once rulers of the American chemical industry, from gunpowder to Teflon, their innovations made them vital to US defense and household products alike. They ran the largest family business in US history, controlled General Motors for a time, were above regulation for decades due to classified defense contracts. Their fortune isn't just old, it's hidden behind patents, defense clearances, and agricultural monopolies. The Mellon family. You've heard of Carnegie Mellon, but the Mellon dynasty made its wealth through Gulf Oil, Alcoa aluminum monopoly, Bank of New York Mellon, one of the oldest financial institutions still alive. They quietly influence liquidity, credit markets, and industrial policy. They don't appear on TikTok, they appear on bills introduced into Congress. Stan, the Bronfmans, Canadian liquor kings turned Hollywood and political kingmakers. They built Seagram's empire, but used their connections to fund US political campaigns, intelligence-friendly organizations, media conglomerates that shaped American narratives. Some even allege links to ex-IBM, secret societies, and influence over judicial appointments. The foreign families that own American assets. Here's what people forget: America's not just owned by Americans. Saudi royals, House of Saud, they own massive stakes in Uber, Twitter, Citigroup, and Lucid Motors, billions in US Treasury bonds, and most importantly, Political leverage through oil pricing. They don't buy influence, they buy leverage. Qatar's Al Thani family. Through the Qatar Investment Authority, they own US real estate, Empire State Building, major Silicon Valley ventures, media powerhouses like Al Jazeera, influencing how global narratives are framed, and their holdings are shielded by sovereign immunity. Untouchable. And Swiss banking families, e.g. the Pictets. They don't make headlines, they hide headlines. The Pictet family runs one of the most secretive private banks in the world, with roots dating back to 1805. They manage billions in offshore wealth, the assets of royalty, heads of state, and elite dynasties, including some in America. Their power? Quiet, but devastating. If this video is opening your eyes, imagine what we can't say publicly. Hit subscribe now and check the links in the description for Insider Docs, tools for building financial independence, and a free PDF guide to how elite trusts actually work, because the game is real, and you're either a pawn or you're learning how to play. Elections, lobbying, and the invisible hand. Every 4 years, Americans believe they're choosing their future. In reality, they're choosing between two brands, both funded by the same donors. In 2020 alone, the top 1% of donors contributed over $4 billion to political campaigns. And here's the kicker. Most of it came through super PACs, 501c4 dark money organizations, and bundlers, all designed to hide who's really paying. Some of the most powerful families fund both sides of elections. You vote red or blue, they always win. And through think tanks like the Heritage Foundation, Brookings Institution, American Enterprise Institute, they don't just fund campaigns, they fund policy. These families don't need to be in office, they just need to be behind the people who are, big tech and the behavioral economy. Here's where it gets even deeper. The elites don't want your money, they want your behavior. By investing in data monopolies like Google, Meta, Amazon, and Apple, these families are shifting from resource capitalism to attention capitalism. Every click, every swipe, every purchase, it all goes into behavioral databases that are now more valuable than oil. Who profits? Vanguard, BlackRock, and through them, the dynasties who own both. But it's not just passive data collection, it's predictive programming. They use your data to predict how you'll vote, influence your emotions, nudge you toward purchases, ideologies, and even social movements. Control isn't about violence anymore, it's about suggestion, with you thinking it was your idea. Part 11. Central bank digital currencies. The final stage? Now the elites are prepping the endgame tool, CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. On the surface, they sound efficient, but in reality, they could allow real-time financial surveillance. Programmable money, your dollars can be turned off if you disobey. Geo-restricted spending, can't buy outside a zone. Social credit-style control over your access to the economy. And guess who's advising the Fed on CBDC development? BlackRock, McKinsey, deeply connected to elite families. The BIS Innovation Hub, funded by European and Swiss banking dynasties. This isn't a conspiracy, it's a system being publicly announced, with private ownership behind the scenes. Part 12. Why they stay hidden. You might wonder, if these families are so powerful, why don't they just rule openly? Answer, because secrecy is strength. If the public knew who actually shaped the economy, media, and government, there would be outrage, chaos, rebellion. So instead, they diffuse their names across thousands of LLCs, use nominee directors, store wealth in blind trusts, Swiss banks and sovereign funds, rotate faces, Zuckerberg, Musk, Gates, but keep ownership static. They don't want followers, they want you distracted, scrolling, consuming, voting, working, while they build castles of influence you'll never see. The 1% don't need more money, they need you to stay uninformed. But now, you know, and if you've made it this far, you're not the average viewer. You're the kind of person who asks questions, who digs deeper, who doesn't settle for the surface. So here's what to do next. Subscribe right now. We're building a vault of videos that expose the systems shaping your life behind the curtain. Check the links in the description to access our free guide on elite financial structures, a hidden playlist of censored episodes, and insider updates we can't post on YouTube. This isn't just a YouTube channel, it's a movement of awareness, power, and financial independence. Because the 1% don't want competition, they want control. We're here to disrupt that.